Right now, as you are watching this, your heart is beating approximately 70 times a minute. Your pancreas is quietly releasing insulin in response to the last thing you ate. Your blood vessels are either expanding or contracting based on signals your body is sending itself hundreds of times every hour. And here is what nobody is telling you clearly enough. For millions of people over 60, those signals are getting weaker, slower, less precise. Not because something dramatic happened, not because of one bad day or one bad meal, but because of a slow, silent drift that has been building for years. And the most unsettling part is this: your body has been trying to tell you about it quietly, consistently, in ways that are so easy to dismiss that most people do not even connect them to what is actually happening. Do you feel unusually tired after meals? Not sleepy in a satisfied, comfortable way, but heavy, foggy, like your energy just quietly walked out of the room without telling you? Do you notice that your heart sometimes feels like it is working harder than the moment deserves, climbing one flight of stairs, walking to the car in a parking lot? Nothing strenuous, but your chest feels it more than it used to. Do you wake up in the morning and it takes longer than it should to feel like yourself? Like your body needs extra time to find its rhythm before the day can actually begin? These are not random. These are not just aging. These are signals. Your body's way of tapping you on the shoulder and saying something in here needs attention. And here's the remarkable thing. The habit we are talking about today takes 10 minutes. Not 10 minutes 3 times a week, 10 minutes every single day. And the research behind what it does to your heart function and your blood sugar regulation is the kind of thing that should be in every conversation your doctor has with you, but almost never is. Stay with me, because before we get into the habit itself, I need to tell you about Margaret. Margaret is 71 years old, grandmother of 4, the kind of woman who has spent her entire life taking care of everyone else so consistently and so completely that she genuinely forgot somewhere along the way to take care of herself. Her morning started with rushing, coffee on an empty stomach, helping get the grandchildren ready on the days they stayed over, eating whatever was fastest, whatever was easiest, whatever was left over. About 2 years ago, Margaret started noticing something. After lunch, she would sit down for a moment and just feel flattened. Not tired in a way she could sleep off, flattened, heavy behind the eyes. A kind of mental fog that made the afternoon feel like she was moving through something thicker than air. Her doctor ran some numbers. Her fasting blood sugar was creeping up, not diabetic, but trending in a direction her doctor described as something to watch. And her resting heart rate was higher than it should be for a woman her age. Not dangerously high, but elevated in that quiet, persistent way that suggests the heart is working slightly harder than it needs to every single hour of every single day. Her doctor gave her a pamphlet, told her to eat better and move more. Margaret took the pamphlet home, put it on the kitchen counter, and cried a little because she did not know where to start. Because eat better and move more is the least useful advice in the world when you are 71 and overwhelmed and your knees hurt and your energy is already running low before noon. But then Margaret found the 10-minute habit. And what happened over the next 4 months is exactly why I am making this video today. Let me give you something right now before we go any further. Something free, something immediate. A micro habit that takes 30 seconds and that you can start doing today before this video is even finished. After your next meal, lunch, dinner, whatever comes next, do not sit down immediately. Do not reach for your phone. Do not turn on the television. Instead, stand up and walk slowly, gently, just around your home if that is all you have. Kitchen to living room, down the hallway and back, outside to the end of the driveway and back if you can. Just 2 to 3 minutes of very gentle, unhurried movement immediately after eating. Here's what is happening when you do this. When you eat, your blood sugar rises as your body breaks down carbohydrates into glucose. Under normal circumstances, your muscles are one of the primary places that glucose gets deposited and used. But when you sit still immediately after a meal, your muscles are inactive. They are not calling for glucose. So it builds up in your bloodstream longer than it should, demanding more insulin, stressing your pancreas, and contributing over time to exactly the kind of blood sugar drift that Margaret's doctor was watching with concern. When you walk, even gently, even slowly, your muscles activate. They start accepting glucose directly. They essentially become a sponge that absorbs what would otherwise be floating in your blood, creating problems. Your post-meal blood sugar spike is measurably lower. Your insulin demand drops, and your pancreas gets a break it genuinely needs. 2 to 3 minutes after every meal, starting today, that is your immediate win. Hold on to it. Because what we are building toward the full 10-minute habit takes that principle and amplifies it into something that protects both your heart and your blood sugar simultaneously in a way that compounds every single day you do it. Now let's talk about why the heart and blood sugar are not two separate conversations, because this is the piece of biology that changes how you understand everything else in this video. Most people think of heart health and blood sugar as two different departments. Heart disease is a heart problem. Diabetes and blood sugar are a sugar problem. You see different specialists. You get different medications. They live in different sections of the health pamphlet. But inside your body, they are running on the same highway. Here is the physical reality. When your blood sugar is chronically elevated, even slightly, even in that gray zone that doctors call pre-diabetic, or simply elevated, the excess glucose in your bloodstream begins to attach to the walls of your blood vessels. This process, called glycation, stiffens those walls, makes them less elastic, less able to expand and contract with each heartbeat the way they are designed to. Your heart, which relies on flexible, responsive vessels to do its job efficiently, now has to push harder, work against more resistance. Every single beat, every single hour, every single day. At the same time, that same vascular stiffness reduces the efficiency of blood flow to the heart muscle itself. The heart is not just a pump, it is also an organ that needs its own blood supply to stay healthy. When circulation is compromised, when the pipes are stiff and sluggish, the heart muscle does not get the oxygen and nutrients it needs as efficiently as it should. It starts to labor in ways that are invisible from the outside but absolutely measurable from the inside. This is not theory. This is physical mechanics. Pump and pipe working together or struggling together. And the 10-minute habit we're about to build into your day addresses both sides of that equation at the same time. Margaret had no idea her blood sugar and her tired, overworked heart were connected. She thought she had two problems. She actually had one problem expressing itself in two places. Now, the first component of the 10-minute habit is something most people think they already do, but the way they do it is almost entirely wrong. And the difference between doing it wrong and doing it right is a difference between something pleasant that burns a few calories and something that actually creates measurable change in your cardiovascular and metabolic function. It is walking, but not walking the way most people walk. The specific protocol is this: 10 minutes. Done either in the morning before your first meal or immediately after your largest meal of the day. And here is the element that makes it different from a casual stroll. It is done in intervals, not intense intervals, not anything that leaves you breathless or strains your joints, but deliberate, structured variation in pace. 2 minutes at your comfortable, easy conversational pace. Then 1 minute where you walk just slightly faster than feels completely effortless. Not fast, not power walking. Just one noticeable step up from your baseline. Then back to 2 minutes, easy. Then 1 minute, slightly brisker again. Repeat that pattern for 10 minutes total. What this specific rhythm does inside your cardiovascular system is something that steady, flat pace walking simply does not replicate. The slight increase in pace during those 1 minute intervals causes your heart rate to rise just enough to stimulate what researchers call cardiac preconditioning. Your heart muscle gets a gentle, repeated challenge that signals it to become more efficient, more elastic, more capable of handling variation without strain. And the recovery periods, those 2 minutes of easy walking, are where the adaptation actually happens. Where your heart rate comes down, your vessels dilate, and your body learns to regulate itself more responsibly. At the same time, that alternating pace pattern activates your muscle tissue more completely than steady walking does. More muscle activation means more glucose uptake. More glucose uptake means a more significant and more lasting reduction in your post-meal blood sugar spike. Margaret started doing exactly this, 10 minutes every morning, and on the days she ate a larger lunch, she added a second 10-minute session after that meal as well. 4 weeks in, she told me she was sleeping better, waking up with more clarity. The afternoon fog was lighter. 8 weeks in, her energy after meals was something she described as almost unrecognizable compared to what it had been. And at her 4-month check-in, her fasting blood sugar had moved back into the normal range. Her resting heart rate had dropped 7 beats per minute. 7 beats per minute. That does not sound dramatic until you do the math. 7 fewer beats per minute means over 10,000 fewer beats every single day. 10,000 times a day. Her heart was working slightly less hard than it had been before. That is not a small thing. That is the difference between a heart that is laboring and a heart that has found its rhythm again. And here is what Margaret told me that I want you to really hear. She said, I thought I needed a complicated plan. I thought I needed a gym membership or a special diet or some expensive program, and all I needed was 10 minutes and the right information. That is what is coming next. Because the walking interval is the foundation. But there are specific additions to this 10-minute habit, things you do before it and after it, that take what is already working and turn it into something your heart and your blood sugar feel every single day for the rest of your life. Here is phase 2, seamless continuation, no break in narrative flow. Before the walk, there is a preparation step that most people skip entirely. And skipping it is like warming up a car engine in winter by immediately flooring the accelerator. Technically, it works, but the wear and tear it creates is completely unnecessary and completely avoidable. 2 minutes before you begin your walking interval, do this. Stand tall, feet shoulder width apart, and simply breathe, but not casual, absent-minded breathing. Deliberate, slow, diaphragmatic breathing. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts. Let your belly expand, not just your chest. Hold for just 1 count. Then exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 counts. Repeat that 5 or 6 times over those 2 minutes before you take your first step. Here is what is physically happening during those 2 minutes. Your autonomic nervous system has 2 primary modes. There is a sympathetic mode, the alert, activated, stress response state that most people over 60 are living in far too much of the time without realizing it. And there is the parasympathetic mode, the calm, regulated, repair and restore state where your body does its best work. Your heart rate variability, which is one of the most important and most overlooked markers of cardiovascular health, is directly tied to how well your body transitions between those two states. Chronic stress, poor sleep, blood sugar fluctuations, years of rushing and worrying, all of these gradually erode your ability to shift into parasympathetic mode efficiently. Your nervous system gets stuck in a low-level alert state. And a nervous system stuck in alert mode keeps your blood vessels slightly constricted, keeps your heart rate slightly elevated, keeps your cortisol slightly raised, and keeps your cells slightly resistant to insulin. Those 2 minutes of deliberate breathing before your walk begin to shift that. They activate your vagus nerve, the long wandering nerve that runs from your brainstem all the way through your heart and into your gut, and that serves as the primary pathway of your parasympathetic nervous system. When you breathe slowly and deliberately, especially with that longer exhale, you are directly stimulating vagal tone. You are telling your nervous system it is safe to relax. It is safe to regulate. It is safe to do the deep work now. Margaret thought the breathing part was going to feel silly. She told me she stood in her kitchen the first morning, looked out the window at her garden, and breathed for 2 minutes and felt almost embarrassed by how simple it was. By the third day, she said it was the part she looked forward to most, because for the first time in years, she had 2 minutes that belonged entirely to her body. No rushing, no list, no one needing anything, just her and her breath and the quiet signal to her nervous system that today was going to be different. After the breathing, the 10-minute walking interval happens exactly as we described. 2 minutes easy, 1 minute slightly brisker, repeated through the full 10 minutes. Keep your shoulders relaxed. Keep your jaw unclenched. More people walk with a clenched jaw than you would believe, and jaw tension directly feeds back into neck tension, which feeds back into elevated blood pressure. Let your arms swing naturally and breathe through your nose as much as possible during the walk itself. Nasal breathing during light exercise filters the air more effectively, maintains better oxygen and carbon dioxide balance in your blood, and keeps your nervous system in that parasympathetic state you just spent 2 minutes building. Now here is the after walk component. And this is the piece that turns a good habit into a genuinely transformative one. Within 15 minutes of finishing your walk before you eat anything, if this is your morning session, or as a complement to your meal, if this is your post-lunch session, have one specific drink, not a sports drink, not a protein shake, not anything expensive or complicated. Warm water with a 1/4 teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon stirred into it. Let me be precise here, because the type of cinnamon matters enormously. Ceylon cinnamon. Not the standard cinnamon you likely have in your spice cabinet right now, which is almost certainly cassia cinnamon. Cassia cinnamon contains high levels of a compound called coumarin, which in large daily amounts can stress the liver. Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes labeled as true cinnamon, contains only trace amounts of coumarin and is the variety with the most robust research behind its effect on blood sugar regulation. What Ceylon cinnamon does is this. It contains compounds that mimic insulin activity at the cellular level. They help your cells become more receptive to insulin signal, more willing to open their doors and accept glucose from the bloodstream. This is called improving insulin sensitivity. And improving insulin sensitivity is the single most important metabolic shift you can make for long-term blood sugar health that does not involve medication. When you combine improved insulin sensitivity from the cinnamon with the muscle glucose uptake, you have just stimulated through your walking interval And the nervous system regulation you initiated through your pre-walk breathing, you are creating a 3-layer metabolic event in your body every single morning. Each layer amplifying the others. Each one doing something the others cannot do alone. Margaret started calling it her 3-part morning. 2 minutes of breathing, 10 minutes of walking, 1 warm cup of Ceylon cinnamon water. She did it before breakfast every day. And on the afternoon, she felt the fog creeping back. She repeated the walk after lunch. Not always, not perfectly, but consistently enough that her body began to expect it, began to build around it, began to regulate around it. Now I want to talk about a mistake, a very common, very understandable mistake that people make when they start a habit like this and it begins working. They add more. They think if 10 minutes is producing these results, 20 minutes must produce double. If 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon is helping, a full teaspoon must help twice as much. And so they push harder, add more, complicate what was beautifully simple, and then either injure themselves, overwhelm their system, or simply burn out on the effort and abandon the whole thing by week 3. Your body does not respond to volume. It responds to consistency. A gentle, intelligent, daily signal repeated 365 times is worth infinitely more than an aggressive, complicated protocol that falls apart after 3 weeks because it was never sustainable in the first place. 10 minutes every day. That is the goal. Not 20 minutes, 5 days a week. 10 minutes every single day. Because the metabolic and cardiovascular adaptations we are talking about are built through repetition, not through intensity. Your heart muscle gets stronger through consistent, gentle challenge repeated over time. Your insulin sensitivity improves through daily activation of your muscles and daily reduction of post-meal blood sugar spikes compounding week over week. You cannot rush that process, but you also cannot stop it once it is genuinely underway. Arthur, remember Arthur from before? Our stubborn but good-hearted retired mechanic. He tried to do 30 minutes on his first day. His knees ached for 2 days afterward. He skipped 4 days recovering, then felt guilty, tried to make up for it with another long session, and ended up in the same cycle of overdo and recover that kept him from ever building any real consistency. When he finally committed to just 10 minutes, no more, no guilt, no pushing, he did it for 93 days straight. Not because he was particularly disciplined, but because 10 minutes was so undeniably manageable that there was never a good enough reason not to do it. And at 93 days, the habit was no longer something he decided to do. It was simply something he did, like brushing his teeth, like putting on his shoes. It had become part of the architecture of his day. That is the real goal. Not motivation, not willpower, architecture. Building the habit so small and so consistent that your life simply shapes itself around it. Now let's talk about the people who genuinely cannot walk easily, because I hear you. Knee replacements, hip issues, balance concerns, neuropathy in the feet, these are real. They are not excuses. They are physical realities that deserve a real answer, not a dismissal. If walking is difficult for you, the interval principle still applies. It just applies to a different movement. Seated, marching, sitting in a sturdy chair, lifting your knees alternately in a marching motion is a legitimate, research-supported alternative that activates the large muscles of your thighs and engages your cardiovascular system meaningfully. 2 minutes, easy pace, 1 minute, slightly faster for 10 minutes total. The glucose uptake mechanism works through muscle activation, regardless of whether you are standing or seated. Your heart rate still responds. Your nervous system still benefits from the pre-movement breathing. The cinnamon water still works. There is always a smart substitution, always. The body does not require perfection. It requires consistent, intelligent attention. Margaret's neighbor, a woman named Ruth, who has used a walker since her hip replacement 18 months ago, started the seated marching version of this habit. She told Margaret 3 months later that her morning blood sugar readings, which she monitors at home, had dropped noticeably. She was sleeping through the night more consistently, and her cardiologist at her last appointment commented that her resting heart rate had improved, seated in a chair, 10 minutes a day. The body responds when you give it the right signal, regardless of how that signal is delivered. Let's bring this all the way home now, because here is what I want you to understand about what we have built together in this video. You woke up this morning with a heart that has been beating for your entire life without ever once asking you for a day off, without ever once saying it was too tired, too busy, or too overwhelmed. It has just kept going, kept pumping, kept showing up for you through every hard year, every sleepless night, every stressful season of your life. And your blood sugar system, your pancreas, your insulin receptors, your muscle cells has been trying to maintain balance through decades of processed food, sedentary afternoons, skip meals, and chronic stress. It has been working harder than it should, for longer than it should, with less support than it deserved. 10 minutes a day is not a massive ask. It is the least we can do in return. Margaret is 71 years old. She is not running marathons. She is not lifting weights at a gym. She is not following a complicated protocol that requires a nutrition degree to understand. She is breathing for 2 minutes, walking for 10, and drinking a warm cup of Ceylon cinnamon water. Every morning, rain or shine, good days and hard days alike. And last month, her doctor looked at her numbers and said, whatever you are doing, keep doing it. Her blood sugar was normal. Her resting heart rate was the lowest it had been in 8 years. Her energy, by her own account, was something she had honestly stopped expecting to feel again. She called me after that appointment and said just 4 words. My body came back. That is what this is about. Not adding years to a calendar, adding life back into your days. The energy to be present with your grandchildren without watching the clock for when you can sit down. The confidence to climb the stairs without your heart reminding you it is there. The quiet, private dignity of a body that is working with you instead of against you. If this gave you something real today, share it with someone whose heart you care about, because this information belongs to everyone who needs it. And if you are ready to go deeper, if you want to understand the connection between your daily movement, your cellular energy, and the long-term vitality that most people assume is simply out of reach after 60. The next video on Longevity Lane with Dr. Mandell is ready for you right now. Everything we talked about today connects directly to what is waiting for you there. Do not miss it.